In our previous presentation, we examined the early stages of drug development, from preclinical evaluation in animals through the relatively small phases 1 and 2 trials in humans. In this presentation, we'll look at the activities in phase 3 and beyond that are necessary to bring a new drug to market. Phase 3 is often referred to as the pivotal phase of testing a potential new drug because it's intended to provide the most significant safety and efficacy information to support a drug marketing approval. These trials are conducted in patients that belong to the population for which the therapy is intended. Large numbers, typically thousands of patients, are required unless the target disease is rare and therefore large numbers of potential patients cannot be found, or unless the FDA gives permission to use a smaller sample size in order to complete the trial more rapidly. The trial is carefully designed to provide the maximum possible amount of meaningful data to support the claims that the sponsor wants to make for the drug. The drug itself is manufactured using materials and processes that are the same as those that are going to be used in the final product that will be brought to market. The sponsor's representatives may request that the FDA review the protocol with them before it's finalized. FDA experts will provide feedback on the design and may give their opinions on whether the positive outcome might be sufficient to obtain approval, although this is not binding and the data, even if positive, might not be considered adequate to support approval. Since a phase 3 trial can cost in the tens of millions of dollars and take years to complete, a sponsor will gratefully accept whatever help that they can get to increase the likelihood that they're doing it right. Most drug candidates will be tested in at least 2 phase 3 trials. After the phase 3 program is concluded, the finding from all investigations, including preclinical and phase 1 through 3 trials, are evaluated. If the sponsor is convinced that the safety and effectiveness of the drug has been adequately demonstrated, an application may be made to obtain approval to market the drug in selected countries. The sponsor will collect all of the information that it has on the drug candidate into a massive dossier called a new drug application. In addition to the final reports on the preclinical and clinical studies and analysis of the safety and efficacy data, the new drug application will include chemistry, manufacturing, and controls information. This includes the chemical structure, raw materials, manufacturing process, and tests that will be performed to demonstrate the quality and stability of the form of the drug that will be sold to patients. It will also contain a sample label that instructs the patient how to take the drug and describes the possible side effects. This becomes part of the package insert that is found inside the commercial drug package. The final submission will be thousands of pages long, and multiple copies are required. While this document was historically delivered to the FDA as a literal truckload of paper copies, as of the middle of 2017, the agency only accepts submissions in electronic format. This makes it far simpler for the sponsor to send it to the agency and for the reviewers to do their jobs. After a 60-day review period, the FDA decides whether the application is suitable for review. That is, to make sure that all sections are there, the format is as required, and all text and figures are legible, the links work, etc., after which it's formally filed. A review team is assigned, and the review process begins. At this stage, the FDA will also inspect facilities at which the sponsor intends to manufacture the drug. By law, the FDA is required to conduct its review of the application within 10 months after filing it, and the sponsor is given an expected date for completion, referred to as the PDUFA date. Some drugs may be prioritized and reviewed in 6 months if they're considered significant medical breakthroughs or they offer treatment where no other options exist. The FDA makes every effort to meet the deadline, but the clock may be stopped if the FDA needs additional time to review data or the sponsor requests that amendments be made to the application. Sometimes the FDA review team will request input from an independent advisory committee, which is composed of scientific experts as well as representatives of the public, such as patients, who may make comments regarding various aspects of the application and recommendations for or against approval. The final decision, however, is made by the FDA. If the FDA doesn't consider the data sufficiently compelling to approve the drug, it may issue a complete response letter, either rejecting the application outright or, more commonly, describing outstanding questions and requests for additional data that would require the review to continue, and perhaps later on to approve the drug. In the best case, however, the FDA will notify the sponsor that the drug has been approved, in the form and for the indications and patient populations described in the application, and that it now may be manufactured, promoted, and sold in the United States. While FDA approval indicates that the agency considers the drug, as described in the application, to be safe and effective, that's not quite the end of the story. Let's look now at the post-marketing surveillance, or Phase 4, as it's sometimes referred to. Phases 1 through 3 of the clinical trials provided evidence of the safety and efficacy of the drug in thousands of patients. However, once a drug's on the market, it may be administered to millions of patients, and under circumstances that were not envisioned during testing. In the course of real-world use, side effects may be observed that were not seen in the clinical trials, and the drug may not be as effective in treating the target indication in actual populations. For this reason, the sponsor will continue to collect information about the drug for many years after it goes on the market, and must share this with the FDA and other regulatory agencies throughout the world where the drug is used. If evidence becomes available that shows that the drug is either unsafe or fails to provide a therapeutic benefit, the FDA may require that the drug in circulation be recalled and may withdraw approval entirely. Let's look at off-label use. Physicians, and sometimes patients themselves, may choose to use the drug off-label. That is, for a disease or condition, or in a dosage or age group or route of administration, that differs from those described on the label for which the FDA approved the drug. While companies are forbidden to promote a drug for an off-label use, administering a pharmaceutical in an unapproved manner is legal unless it violates ethical guidelines or safety regulations. While off-label use is widespread and often reveals significant and unanticipated therapeutic benefits, the prescribing physician or self-medicating patient does so at their own risk and should carefully investigate known safety and effectiveness characteristics of the drug before experimenting with it. Successful off-label use may encourage the drug sponsor to seek FDA approval for this new use, and it may decide to conduct controlled clinical trials under these novel conditions to support submission of a supplemental application. New drug candidates must successfully undergo several phases of testing, as dictated by the relevant regulatory agencies. Although this is typically a long, expensive, and demanding process, the FDA will work with sponsors to simplify and accelerate the route to approval when it's in the best interests of the patients. For example, a new drug formulation or generic form of an already approving drug might be permitted to skip Phase 1 and only have to go through some minimal Phase 2 or Phase 3 testing to support a supplemental new drug application. Research organizations, constrained by limited resources, may be reluctant to invest the extraordinary amount of time and money needed to develop a drug for a small patient population that is likely to generate limited revenues. Therefore, the requirements may be modified in the cases of drug for orphan indications or for serious life-threatening conditions for which the proposed new drug is thought to provide a therapeutic benefit over existing therapies. However, the agency will continue to monitor the drug post-approval and will respond quickly if the treatment fails to live up to its original promises of safety or effectiveness. The FDA exists to ensure, as far as possible, that the medicines provided to the patients in the United States adhere to the highest standards of safety and effectiveness.